The Hidden Passageway. Chapter 1. An Ordinary Day. Evelyn Matthews adjusted her glasses as she peered at the ancient tome before her. The musty smell of old books filled her nostrils, a scent she had grown to love over her years as head librarian at the Willowbrook Public Library. The building itself was almost as old as some of the books it housed, with its Gothic architecture and winding staircases that seemed to lead nowhere. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon, and the library was nearly empty. A few regulars occupied the reading nooks, their faces buried in newspapers or novels. Evelyn savored these peaceful moments, surrounded by the knowledge and stories of countless generations. As she carefully turned the brittle pages of the book she was examining, a small piece of paper fluttered to the floor. Curious, Evelyn bent down to retrieve it. The paper was yellowed with age, its edges frayed and torn. As she unfolded it, her eyes widened in surprise. It was a map, intricately drawn with faded ink, showing what appeared to be a series of tunnels beneath the library. Evelyn's heart raced as she studied the map more closely. She had worked at the library for over 2 decades, and she knew every nook and cranny of the building, or so she thought. The map seemed to indicate a hidden entrance in the basement, behind a bookshelf that housed the library's oldest and rarest volumes. Glancing at the clock, Evelyn realized it was almost closing time. She carefully folded the map and slipped it into her pocket, her mind buzzing with excitement and curiosity. As she went through the motions of closing up the library, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the brink of something extraordinary. Chapter 2. The Discovery. That night, Evelyn tossed and turned in her bed, unable to sleep. The map consumed her thoughts, its secrets calling out to her. Unable to resist any longer, she threw off her covers and got dressed. It was just past midnight when she arrived back at the library, fumbling with her keys in the darkness. The old building creaked and groaned as Evelyn made her way through the silent halls, her flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. She descended the stairs to the basement, her heart pounding in her chest. The musty smell grew stronger as she approached the ancient bookshelf mentioned in the map. With trembling hands, Evelyn began to examine the shelf, running her fingers along the spines of the old books. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but something told her she would know it when she found it. Suddenly, her fingers brushed against a small hidden lever. Without hesitation, she pulled it. A low rumbling filled the air as the bookshelf slowly swung open, revealing a dark passageway beyond. Evelyn gasped, her flashlight beam illuminating rough stone walls covered in strange symbols and markings. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the tunnel, the bookshelf closing behind her with a soft click. The air in the passageway was cool and damp, carrying a faint sweet scent that Evelyn couldn't quite place. Her flashlight beam danced across the walls as she moved forward, revealing more of the mysterious symbols. They seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, almost as if they were alive. As Evelyn ventured deeper into the tunnel, she began to hear a faint humming sound. It grew louder with each step, vibrating through her body. The tunnel began to slope downward, and Evelyn found herself descending into the earth, deeper than she ever thought possible beneath the library. After what felt like hours of walking, Evelyn emerged into a vast cavern. Her flashlight beam couldn't reach the ceiling, and the space seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. But what truly took her breath away was the soft, ethereal glow that filled the cavern. It seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves, casting everything in a pale, shimmering light. In the center of the cavern stood an enormous stone archway, covered in the same strange symbols she had seen in the tunnel. Beyond the arch, Evelyn could see glimpses of lush vegetation, and hear the distant sound of running water. It was as if an entire world existed beyond that threshold, hidden away beneath the streets of Willowbrook. Evelyn's mind reeled as she tried to process what she was seeing. She had always believed in the power of books to transport readers to other worlds, but she never imagined she would find an actual portal to another realm, hidden in her own library. With a mixture of fear and excitement, she took a deep breath and stepped through the archway, leaving the world she knew behind. Chapter 3. A New World. As Evelyn passed through the archway, she felt a tingling sensation wash over her body. The air around her shimmered, and for a moment she felt weightless. When the sensation passed, she found herself standing in a lush, vibrant forest unlike anything she had ever seen before. The trees towered above her, their leaves shimmering with an iridescent glow. Flowers of impossible colors bloomed everywhere, their petals seeming to pulse with an inner light. The air was filled with a symphony of strange bird calls and the buzzing of unseen insects. A gentle breeze carried the scent of exotic fruits and flowers, making Evelyn's head spin with its intoxicating aroma. As she took in her surroundings, Evelyn noticed a well-worn path leading deeper into the forest. With no other obvious direction to go, she decided to follow it. As she walked, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every so often she caught glimpses of movement out of the corner of her eye, but whenever she turned to look, there was nothing there. The path led her to a clearing where a crystal-clear stream flowed over smooth, multicolored stones. Evelyn knelt by the water, suddenly aware of how thirsty she was. As she cupped her hands to drink, she noticed her reflection in the water and gasped in shock. Her appearance had changed subtly but noticeably. Her hair, normally a mousy brown, now shimmered with streaks of silver and gold. Her eyes, once a dull hazel, now sparkled with flecks of emerald and sapphire. Even her skin seemed to glow with a soft, inner light. As Evelyn stared at her transformed reflection, a voice spoke behind her, causing her to jump. "Welcome, traveler. We've been expecting you." Evelyn whirled around to find herself face to face with a creature unlike anything she had ever seen. It stood on two legs like a human, but its body was covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with every movement. Its face was vaguely feline, with large almond-shaped eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. "Who are you?" Evelyn stammered, her heart racing. "Where am I?" The creature smiled, revealing a row of sharp, pearlescent teeth. "I am Zephyr, a guardian of this realm. And you, dear Evelyn, have stumbled upon Lumina, the hidden world beneath your feet." Evelyn's mind reeled. "How do you know my name? And how is this possible? A whole world, hidden beneath the library." Zephyr chuckled, a sound like tinkling bells. "The library is merely one of many gateways to our world, Evelyn. As for how we know you, well, that's a long story. One that begins long before you were born." As Zephyr spoke, more creatures emerged from the forest. Some resembled animals Evelyn recognized, while others were completely alien to her. All of them regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and reverence. "Come," Zephyr said, gesturing towards a path that led deeper into the forest. "There is much for you to see and learn. Your arrival marks the beginning of a new chapter in the history of both our worlds." Still in a daze, Evelyn followed Zephyr and the other creatures, her mind struggling to process everything she had seen and heard. Little did she know that her adventure was only just beginning, and that the fate of two worlds now rested on her shoulders. Chapter 4. The City of Light. As Evelyn followed Zephyr and the other creatures deeper into the forest, the vegetation gradually thinned out, giving way to a breathtaking sight. Before her stood a city unlike anything she had ever seen or imagined. Towering spires of crystal and living wood reached towards a sky that shimmered with auroral lights. Bridges of woven vines connected the various structures, and everywhere Evelyn looked, she saw creatures of all shapes and sizes going about their daily lives. "Welcome to Lumina's capital, the City of Light," Zephyr announced, his voice filled with pride. "This is the heart of our civilization, where magic and nature exist in perfect harmony." Evelyn's eyes widened as she took in the magnificent sight. It's incredible," she breathed, struggling to find words that could do justice to the spectacle before her. As they entered the city, Evelyn noticed that the ground beneath her feet was paved with smooth, luminescent stones that seemed to pulse with an inner light. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and the melodious songs of unseen birds. Creatures of all kinds bustled about, some flying overhead on gossamer wings, others scurrying along the ground or swinging from vine to vine. Despite their diverse appearances, they all moved with a sense of purpose and serenity that Evelyn found captivating. Zephyr led her to a grand building in the center of the city. Its walls were made of living crystal that shifted and sparkled in the ethereal light. As they approached, the crystal parted like a curtain, allowing them entry. Inside, Evelyn found herself in a vast circular chamber. The walls were lined with shelves containing countless books, scrolls, and strange artifacts. In the center of the room stood a group of beings that seemed to radiate wisdom and power. They turned to face Evelyn as she entered, their eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. "Esteemed council," Zephyr announced, "I present to you Evelyn Matthews, the traveler from the world above." The beings bowed their heads in acknowledgement, and one of them stepped forward. It was tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl and eyes that held the depth of the cosmos. "Welcome, Evelyn Matthews," it said, its voice resonating in her mind rather than her ears. "I am Ether, the chief lore-keeper of Lumina. We have awaited your arrival for many cycles." Evelyn's brow furrowed in confusion. "You've been waiting for me? But how? Why?" Ether smiled gently. "There is a prophecy, Evelyn, one that speaks of a traveler from the world above who would come to us in our time of need. A keeper of knowledge who would bridge the gap between our worlds and help us face a great darkness that threatens to consume both realms." Evelyn's mind reeled. A prophecy? About her? It seemed impossible, and yet, hadn't she always felt that there was something more to her life than cataloging books and helping patrons find research materials? I don't understand," she stammered. "I'm just a librarian. How could I possibly help you face a great darkness?" Zephyr placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You are far more than just a librarian, Evelyn. You are a guardian of knowledge, a preserver of stories. In Lumina, such a role holds great power and responsibility." Ether nodded in agreement. "The magic that flows through our world is deeply connected to the power of stories and knowledge. It is why the gateway to our realm was hidden in your library. And it is why you, a keeper of books and lore, are uniquely suited to help us in our time of need." As Evelyn struggled to process this information, another member of the council stepped forward. This one resembled a great tree, its bark gleaming like polished wood and its leaves shimmering with an inner light. "I am Sylvan," it introduced itself, its voice like the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. "Evelyn, we understand that this is a lot to take in, but time is of the essence. The darkness we speak of is not just a metaphor. It is a very real threat that has already begun to encroach upon our borders." Evelyn took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. What exactly is this darkness? And what am I supposed to do about it?" Ether waved a hand, and the air in the center of the chamber shimmered. An image appeared, showing a roiling mass of inky blackness that seemed to devour everything in its path. Evelyn shuddered at the sight. "We call it the Void," Ether explained. "It is a force of uncreation, the antithesis of the magic that sustains our world. For eons we have kept it at bay, but our power is waning. We believe that the key to stopping it lies in the combined knowledge of both our worlds." Sylvan continued, "Your library in the world above contains tomes of forgotten lore that may hold the secret to defeating the Void. But only someone from your world can unlock their true power." Evelyn's mind was spinning. It all seemed so fantastical, like something out of the stories she loved to read. And yet, she couldn't deny the reality of what she was seeing and experiencing. I want to help," she said finally, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "But I don't know how. Where do I even begin?" Zephyr smiled, his eyes twinkling with approval. "That, dear Evelyn, is where your true adventure begins. We will teach you about our world, our magic, and how to harness the power of knowledge. And then together, we will find a way to save both our realms from the encroaching darkness." As the weight of her newfound responsibility settled on her shoulders, Evelyn felt a mixture of fear and excitement. She had always dreamed of being part of something greater, of making a real difference in the world. Now it seemed she had been given that chance not just for one world but for two. With a deep breath, she squared her shoulders and nodded. "All right," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Where do we start?" Chapter 5, The First Lesson. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity for Evelyn. She was given quarters in a beautiful crystal spire that overlooked the city of light, its walls shifting to match her moods and desires. Each morning, she awoke to the melodious songs of creatures she had yet to name, their voices a reminder of the wondrous world she now inhabited. Her education in the ways of Lumina began immediately. Zephyr took on the role of her primary guide and teacher, introducing her to the various aspects of their society and magic. Evelyn learned that the creatures of Lumina were deeply connected to the natural world, drawing their power from the elements and the very essence of life itself. On her third day in the city, Zephyr led Evelyn to a secluded garden nestled between two towering crystal structures. The air here was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, and the ground was carpeted with soft, luminescent moss. "Today," Zephyr announced, "we begin your training in the art of Lumen magic." Evelyn's eyes widened with excitement. She had seen the inhabitants of Lumina perform incredible feats of magic over the past few days, manipulating light, water, and even the very air around them. The prospect of learning such abilities herself was both thrilling and daunting. "Lumen magic," Zephyr explained, "is the foundation of our society. It is the art of harnessing the energy that flows through all things, the same energy that gives life to the stories in your books." He gestured for Evelyn to sit on a smooth stone in the center of the garden. As she did so, she felt a tingling sensation in her fingertips, as if the stone itself was alive with energy. "Close your eyes," Zephyr instructed gently. "Breathe deeply and try to sense the energy around you. It flows like a river, connecting all living things." Evelyn did as she was told, closing her eyes and focusing on her breath. At first, she felt nothing but the cool stone beneath her and the warm sun on her face. But as she continued to breathe and focus, she began to sense something else, a faint, pulsing energy that seemed to emanate from everything around her. "That's it," Zephyr encouraged. "Now reach out with your mind. Try to grasp that energy, to feel its flow and rhythm." Evelyn concentrated harder, imagining herself reaching out to touch the energy she sensed. To her surprise, she felt something respond, a warm, tingling sensation that flowed into her, filling her with a sense of connection to everything around her. "Open your eyes," Zephyr said softly. Evelyn did so and gasped in amazement. The garden around her was glowing with a soft, pulsating light. Every plant, every stone, even the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. She looked down at her hands and saw that they too were emitting a faint golden glow. "What you're seeing," Zephyr explained, his voice filled with pride, "is the lumen energy that flows through all things. You've taken your first step in learning to perceive and interact with it." Evelyn stared in wonder at her glowing hands. "This is incredible," she breathed. "I can feel it like a warm current flowing through me." Zephyr nodded approvingly. "That feeling is the key to lumen magic. Now let's try something a bit more challenging. Focus on that flower in front of you." He pointed to a delicate, bell-shaped bloom that hung from a nearby vine. Its petals were a deep purple, with veins of silver running through them. "Concentrate on the energy flowing through the flower," Zephyr instructed. "Try to connect your energy to it, to feel its life force." Evelyn focused her attention on the flower, trying to sense the energy within it, as she had with her surroundings. After a few moments, she felt a connection form, like a thin thread of light linking her to the plant. "Good," Zephyr said softly. "Now gently encourage that energy to grow stronger. Imagine the flower blooming even more fully." Evelyn concentrated, visualizing the flower's energy expanding, its petals unfurling further. To her amazement, the flower began to respond. Its petals slowly opened wider, the silver veins glowing brighter. New buds appeared on the vine, quickly growing and blooming in a cascade of purple and silver. I did that," Evelyn gasped, breaking her concentration. The glow faded, but the newly bloomed flowers remained. Zephyr beamed at her. "Indeed you did. You have a natural affinity for lumen magic, Evelyn. With practice, you'll be able to do much more." Over the next few hours, Zephyr guided Evelyn through more exercises, teaching her to manipulate light, to sense the emotions and intentions of living beings, and even to create small illusions. By the time the lesson ended, Evelyn was exhilarated but exhausted. "You've done remarkably well for your first day," Zephyr said as they walked back towards the city center. "But remember, lumen magic is not just about manipulating energy. It's about understanding the connections between all things, and using that understanding responsibly." Evelyn nodded, her mind still reeling from everything she had learned and experienced. "It's all so incredible," she said. "But I can't help wondering, how will this help us fight the void?" Zephyr's expression grew serious. "The void is the absence of connection, the negation of life and energy. By mastering lumen magic, you'll be better equipped to resist its influence and to find ways to counter its effects. But that's just the beginning. He led her to a grand building she hadn't noticed before. Its walls were made of what looked like living wood, with windows of stained glass that depicted scenes from Lumina's history. "This is the great library of Lumina," Zephyr announced. "It contains the collected knowledge and wisdom of our people, gathered over countless generations. It will be your second home during your time here." As they entered, Evelyn's eyes widened in wonder. The interior was vast, with shelves stretching up farther than she could see. Books, scrolls, and strange crystalline devices lined the shelves. In the center of the main hall stood a massive tree, its branches reaching out to touch every corner of the library. "The Tree of Knowledge," Zephyr explained, noticing Evelyn's odd gaze. "It's connected to every book and artifact in the library. Through it, those with the right skills can access the sum total of our people's knowledge." Evelyn approached the tree, feeling drawn to it. As she placed her hand on its trunk, she felt a rush of information, fleeting glimpses of history, science, and magic that left her breathless. "Your task," Zephyr said, "will be to study our lore and compare it with the knowledge from your world. We believe that the key to defeating the void lies in combining the wisdom of both our realms." Evelyn nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders once again. But along with it came a sense of purpose and determination. She was no longer just a librarian from a small town. She was a bridge between worlds, a seeker of knowledge with the power to make a real difference. "I'm ready," she said, her voice firm with resolve. "Where do we begin?" Zephyr smiled, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "We begin with the oldest stories, the legends that speak of the time before the void. Come, let me show you." As Zephyr led her deeper into the library, Evelyn felt a thrill of excitement. She was about to embark on the greatest research project of her life, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about the nature of reality itself. And somewhere in the vast collection of knowledge before her lay the key to saving not one, but two worlds. Chapter 6. Echoes of the Past. Days turned into weeks as Evelyn immersed herself in the lore of Lumina. Each morning, she would practice Lumen magic with Zephyr, honing her skills and deepening her connection to the energy that flowed through the hidden world. In the afternoons and often late into the night, she would pore over ancient texts in the great library, piecing together the history of Lumina and its long struggle against the void. One evening, as the ethereal lights of the city dimmed to signal the coming of night, Evelyn sat surrounded by piles of books and scrolls. Her eyes were tired from hours of reading, but her mind was buzzing with excitement. She had stumbled upon something significant. "Zephyr," she called out, her voice echoing through the cavernous library. "I think I've found something important." The guardian appeared almost instantly, materializing from a swirl of shimmering light. "What is it, Evelyn?" he asked, his eyes bright with curiosity. Evelyn held up an ancient tome, its pages brittle with age. "This book speaks of a time long ago when Lumina and my world were not separate, but one realm. It says that the two worlds were split apart to protect them from some great calamity." Zephyr's eyes widened. "The Sundering," he breathed. "It's a legend among our people, but I've never seen concrete evidence of it." Evelyn nodded excitedly. "There's more. The book mentions a set of artifacts called the Harmonic Keystones. It says they were used in the ritual that split the worlds, and that they hold the power to reunite them." She flipped through the pages, pointing out passages to Zephyr. According to this, there were 5 keystones, each attuned to a different elemental force. They were scattered across both realms for safekeeping. Zephyr leaned in, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This is indeed a significant discovery, Evelyn. If these keystones exist, they could be the key to strengthening the barriers against the void." Evelyn's mind raced with possibilities. "Or," she said slowly, "they could be used to reunite our worlds, combining our strengths to fight the void together." Zephyr looked troubled. "Reuniting the worlds would be incredibly risky. The Sundering happened for a reason. We don't know what consequences such an action might have." "True," Evelyn conceded. "But we're running out of options. The void is growing stronger every day. We need to do something drastic." She stood up, pacing as she thought aloud. "We need to find these keystones. Some of them must be here in Lumina, but others might be in my world. That's why you needed someone from above to search for the keystones there." Zephyr nodded slowly. It's a plausible theory. But finding the keystones won't be easy. They've been hidden for millennia, and we don't even know what they look like. Evelyn grinned, holding up the book. Actually, we do. There are descriptions and even sketches in here. They are said to be crystalline objects, each with a distinct color and shape corresponding to its elemental attunement. She flipped to a page showing intricate drawings of 5 crystal-like objects: a blue teardrop, a red pyramid, a green sphere, a yellow cube, and a purple spiral. Water, fire, earth, air, and spirit, Zephyr murmured, recognizing the elemental associations. The 5 fundamental forces of Lumen magic. Evelyn nodded eagerly. Exactly. And look at this passage here. She pointed to a section of text beneath the drawings. It says that the keystones resonate with each other. If we can find one, it might lead us to the others. Zephyr's expression was a mixture of excitement and concern. This is a monumental discovery, Evelyn. But it's also dangerous knowledge. If the Void were to learn of the keystones' existence, it could try to use them to fully breach the barriers between worlds. Evelyn finished grimly. We need to find them first. Zephyr nodded in agreement. We must inform the council immediately. This changes everything. As they hurried out of the library towards the council chambers, Evelyn's mind was awhirl with thoughts. She had come to Lumina seeking adventure and purpose, but she never imagined she'd be embarking on a quest to save 2 worlds. The weight of responsibility was daunting, but she felt a thrill of excitement coursing through her. For the first time since learning of the threat posed by the Void, Evelyn felt a glimmer of real hope. They had a plan now, a concrete goal to work towards. Finding the Harmonic Keystones wouldn't be easy, but it was a challenge she was ready to face. As they approached the council chambers, Evelyn squared her shoulders and took a deep breath. She was no longer just Evelyn Matthews, small-town librarian. She was Evelyn the Traveler, bridge between worlds and seeker of the Harmonic Keystones. And she was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead in her quest to save both her world and the wondrous realm of Lumina. Chapter 7. The Council's Decision. The council chamber was abuzz with excited murmurs as Evelyn and Zephyr presented their findings. The ethereal beings that made up the governing body of Lumina listened intently, their expressions a mixture of hope and concern. Ether, the chief lorekeeper, was the first to speak after Evelyn finished her explanation. This is indeed a momentous discovery, he said, his voice resonating through the chamber. The Harmonic Keystones have long been considered a myth, a story told to give hope in dark times. To think they might actually exist. Sylvan, the tree-like being Evelyn had met on her first day in Lumina, rustled its leaves thoughtfully. While this discovery offers hope, it also presents great danger. If we pursue this course of action, we risk not only failing to stop the Void but potentially hastening its advance. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice firm with conviction. I understand the risks, esteemed council, but I believe the potential rewards outweigh them. The Void grows stronger every day. If we don't take bold action soon, we may lose both our worlds regardless. A new voice spoke up, belonging to a being that seemed to be made of living flame. The traveler speaks wisely, it said, its voice crackling like a bonfire. I am Ignis, and I say we must seize this opportunity. Too long have we cowered in the face of the Void's advance. It is time to take the fight to our enemy. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, some in agreement, others voicing concerns and objections. Evelyn watched in fascination as the council debated, their forms shifting and changing with the intensity of their emotions. Finally, Ether raised a hand, calling for silence. We have heard all arguments, he said solemnly. Now we must decide. Shall we pursue the search for the Harmonic Keystones, knowing both the hope and the danger they represent? One by one, the council members cast their votes. Evelyn held her breath, acutely aware that the fate of 2 worlds hung in the balance. When the last vote was cast, Ether turned to address Evelyn and Zephyr. The council has decided, he announced. We will seek the Harmonic Keystones. Evelyn Matthews, traveler from the world above, you have brought us this knowledge. Now we ask you to lead the quest to find the keystones. Evelyn's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. I'm honored, she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. But I can't do this alone. Zephyr stepped forward. You won't have to, he said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I will accompany you on this quest, as will others who volunteer their skills and knowledge. Ether nodded approvingly. Indeed. We will assemble a team to aid you in your search. But be warned, Evelyn. This quest will take you to the far corners of both Lumina and your own world. You will face dangers beyond anything you have yet encountered. Evelyn squared her shoulders, feeling the weight of responsibility settling upon her. I understand, she said firmly. I'm ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. Very well, Ether said. We will begin preparations immediately. Zephyr, assemble a team of our most skilled and trustworthy individuals. Evelyn, you must return to your world to begin the search there. Evelyn nodded, her mind already racing with plans. She would need to find a way to search for the keystones without arousing suspicion in her world. Perhaps she could use her position as a librarian to gain access to historical records and artifacts that might hold clues. As the council meeting adjourned, Evelyn felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see Ignis, the flame being, regarding her with eyes that flickered like embers. Traveler, Ignis said, its voice low and urgent. There is something you must know. The search for the keystones. It will not go unnoticed. There are forces in both our worlds that would seek to use their power for their own ends. You must be vigilant, trust carefully, and above all, guard your knowledge well. Evelyn swallowed hard, nodding her understanding. Thank you for the warning, she said. I'll be careful. As she left the council chamber with Zephyr, Evelyn's mind was awhirl with thoughts. She had come to Lumina seeking adventure, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. She was about to embark on a quest that would take her across two worlds, facing unknown dangers and unraveling ancient mysteries. Are you ready for this? Zephyr asked as they walked, his eyes searching her face. Evelyn took a deep breath, then smiled, feeling a surge of determination. As ready as I'll ever be, she replied. When do we start? Zephyr's answering grin was both excited and fierce. We start now, he said. The fate of both our worlds depends on it. As they hurried off to begin their preparations, Evelyn felt a thrill of excitement coursing through her. The quest for the Harmonic Keystones was about to begin, and with it, the greatest adventure of her life. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them, armed with her newfound magical abilities, her librarian's thirst for knowledge, and the support of her new allies in Lumina. The hidden world beneath the library had changed her life forever, and now it was time for Evelyn Matthews to change the fate of two worlds in return. Chapter 8. Return to the Surface. The preparations for Evelyn's return to the surface world were swift but thorough. In the days following the council's decision, she underwent intensive training to hone her Lumen magic skills and received crash courses in Lumen history, culture, and the theoretical underpinnings of the Harmonic Keystones. On the eve of her departure, Evelyn stood in her quarters, packing a small bag with essentials. Zephyr had provided her with several crystals imbued with Lumen energy, which would allow her to communicate with Lumina and recharge her magical abilities while in the surface world. She also carefully packed the ancient tome that had revealed the existence of the Harmonic Keystones, wrapping it in protective cloth. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called. Ether glided into the room, his ethereal form shimmering in the soft light. I hope I'm not disturbing you, Evelyn, he said, his voice gentle. Evelyn shook her head. Not at all. I was just finishing up my packing. Ether nodded, his expression serious. I wanted to speak with you privately before your departure. What you're about to undertake, it's more dangerous than you might realize. Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? Ether sighed, a sound like a soft breeze. The void is not just a force of nature, Evelyn. It has agents, for lack of a better term, beings that serve its will, either knowingly or unknowingly. They exist in both our world and yours. Evelyn's eyes widened. Are you saying there are people in my world who work for the void? Not exactly, Ether explained. Most of them don't even know what the void is. But they are drawn to its power, to the promise of unmaking and remaking reality. They might appear as cult leaders, corrupt politicians, or even seemingly benevolent figures who promise to fix what they see as wrong with the world. He placed a hand on Evelyn's shoulder, his touch cool and comforting. You must be extremely careful, Evelyn. Trust your instincts and the Lumen magic within you. It will help you sense the void's influence. Evelyn nodded solemnly. I understand. Thank you for the warning, Ether. The lorekeeper reached into his robes and pulled out a small iridescent stone. Take this, he said, pressing it into Evelyn's hand. It's a whisper stone. If you're ever in dire need, speak my name into it, and I will hear you no matter where you are. Evelyn clutched the stone, feeling its comforting warmth. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. As Ether left, Evelyn finished her packing, her mind racing with all she had learned. The quest ahead seemed even more daunting now, but she was determined to see it through. The next morning, a small group gathered at the archway that had first brought Evelyn to Lumina. Zephyr stood beside her, along with several other beings who had volunteered to assist in the search for the keystones within Lumina. Remember, Zephyr said, his voice low and urgent, time moves differently between our worlds. What might be days here could be mere hours in your world. Try to return at regular intervals to report and recharge your magic. Evelyn nodded, taking a deep breath. I'm ready, she said, squaring her shoulders. With a final wave to her new friends, Evelyn stepped through the archway. The familiar tingling sensation washed over her, and for a moment, she felt suspended between worlds. Then, with a soft thud, her feet touched solid ground. Evelyn opened her eyes to find herself back in the basement of Willowbrook Public Library. The musty smell of old books filled her nostrils, a scent that now seemed both familiar and strange after her time in Lumina. Glancing at her watch, Evelyn was shocked to see that only a few hours had passed since she had first discovered the hidden passage. It felt like she had been gone for months. As she made her way up the stairs and into the main library, Evelyn's mind raced with plans. She needed to start her search for the keystones, but she also had to maintain her normal life to avoid suspicion. It would be a delicate balancing act. Stepping out into the sunlight, Evelyn took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. The world around her looked the same, but she knew that everything had changed. Somewhere out there, hidden in plain sight, were artifacts of immense power that could save two worlds. And it was up to her to find them. With a determined stride, Evelyn set off towards her apartment. She had research to do, plans to make, and a quest to begin. The fate of two worlds rested on her shoulders, and Evelyn Matthews, once a simple small-town librarian, was ready to rise to the challenge. Little did she know that her every move was being watched by unseen eyes, and that her quest had already set in motion events that would shake both worlds to their very foundations. Chapter 9. Hidden in Plain Sight. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity for Evelyn. By day, she maintained her role as head librarian, going about her usual duties with a newfound sense of purpose. But in every spare moment, she threw herself into researching anything that might lead her to the Harmonic Keystones. She pored over local histories, archaeological reports, and even folklore collections, looking for any mention of strange crystals or unexplained phenomena that might be linked to the keystones. Evelyn's colleagues noticed her increased enthusiasm for research, but attributed it to a new personal project. One crisp Saturday morning, Evelyn found herself in the town's small historical society, rifling through dusty archives. Her fingers tingled with the faint traces of Lumen magic as she handled old documents, hoping to sense any residual energy that might indicate a connection to Lumina. Find anything interesting, Ms. Matthews? A voice asked, startling Evelyn from her concentration. She looked up to see Dr. Harriet Blackwood, the society's elderly curator, peering at her curiously. Evelyn had known Dr. Blackwood for years, often collaborating with her on local history projects for the library. Oh, hello, Dr. Blackwood, Evelyn said, trying to calm her racing heart. I'm just doing some personal research, trying to trace the origins of some unusual artifacts I've come across. Dr. Blackwood's eyes lit up with interest. Unusual artifacts, you say? Anything I might be able to help with? Evelyn hesitated. She couldn't reveal the truth, but perhaps the curator's extensive knowledge could be useful. Well, she said slowly, I'm looking for information on any strange crystals or gemstones that might have been found in the area. particularly ones with unusual properties or associated with local legends. Dr. Blackwood's brow furrowed in thought. That does ring a bell. Give me a moment. She shuffled over to a filing cabinet and began rummaging through its contents. Evelyn waited, her heart pounding with anticipation. Could this be a lead? Ah, here we are, Dr. Blackwood said triumphantly, pulling out a faded folder. Back in the 1920s, there was quite a stir about a peculiar gemstone found in the old silver mine just outside of town. The miners called it the Weeping Stone because it supposedly cried pure water. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. A stone that produced water? It sounded exactly like the kind of magical artifact she was looking for. What happened to it? She asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Dr. Blackwood shrugged. That's where the story gets murky. Some say it was sold to a private collector. Others claim it was stolen. There were even rumors that the government confiscated it for study. In any case, it vanished from public record shortly after its discovery. Evelyn's mind raced. Could this weeping stone be the water keystone? Seemed too perfect to be a coincidence. Is there any information on what it looked like? She asked eagerly. The curator flipped through the folder, then pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping. There's a sketch here, though it's not very detailed. Described as teardrop-shaped, and a blue so deep it seemed to contain an ocean. Evelyn's heart leapt. The description matched perfectly with the illustration in the ancient tome from Lumina. This had to be it. Dr. Blackwood, this is incredibly helpful, Evelyn said, barely containing her excitement. Is there any other information about where it might have ended up? The older woman shook her head. I'm afraid not, dear. But, she hesitated, lowering her voice conspiratorially, there have always been rumors about strange goings on at the old Hawthorne estate on the edge of town. The family was known for collecting oddities. If the stone is still in the area, that's where I'd look. Evelyn nodded, her mind already formulating plans. Thank you so much, Dr. Blackwood. You've been an incredible help. As she left the Historical Society, Evelyn's steps were light with excitement. She had a real tangible lead on one of the Harmonic Keystones. But her elation was tempered by caution. If she had managed to find this information, others might have as well. She needed to move quickly. Ducking into an alleyway, Evelyn pulled out one of the communication crystals Zephyr had given her. She needed to report her findings to Lumina and plan her next move. As she activated the crystal, she failed to notice a shadowy figure watching her from a nearby rooftop, its eyes gleaming with malevolent interest. The quest for the Harmonic Keystones was truly underway, but so too were the machinations of forces that would stop at nothing to claim their power. Evelyn's adventure was about to take a dangerous turn, testing not only her newfound magical abilities, but also her courage, wit, and the strength of her convictions. Chapter 10. The Hawthorne Estate. The Hawthorne Estate loomed before Evelyn, its Gothic architecture a stark contrast to the modest homes that surrounded it. Wrought iron gates, long since rusted shut, guarded the entrance to the overgrown grounds. The mansion itself seemed to glare down at her, its windows like hollow eyes, challenging her to uncover its secrets. Evelyn had spent the past week preparing for this moment. She had pored over old maps of the estate, studied the Hawthorne family history, and practiced her Lumen magic relentlessly. Now, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the unkempt lawn, she knew it was time to act. With a deep breath, Evelyn closed her eyes and focused on the Lumen energy flowing through her. She envisioned it forming a cloak around her, bending light to make her less noticeable. It wasn't true invisibility, but it would help her avoid casual observation. Carefully, she climbed over the gate, wincing at the slight creak of metal. As her feet touched the ground on the other side, a shiver ran down her spine. The air here felt different, heavier somehow, as if the very atmosphere was trying to keep the estate's secrets. Evelyn made her way through the overgrown gardens, her senses on high alert. The Lumen magic within her buzzed with nervous energy, reacting to something in the environment. Whatever was hidden here, it was powerful. As she approached the main entrance of the mansion, Evelyn paused. Breaking and entering wasn't something she had ever imagined herself doing, but the fate of two worlds hung in the balance. With a whispered apology to her law-abiding librarian self, she placed her hand on the door lock and channeled her magic into it. The lock resisted at first, but then with a soft click it gave way. Evelyn pushed the door open slowly, wincing at the creak of unoiled hinges. The foyer beyond was dark and musty, years of neglect evident in the thick layer of dust that covered everything. Evelyn conjured a small orb of Lumen light, letting it float just above her shoulder. Its soft glow revealed peeling wallpaper, tarnished mirrors, and furniture draped in sheets. But it was the grand staircase that drew her attention. At its base stood a statue of a robed figure, its hand outstretched as if in warning or welcome. As Evelyn approached the statue, her magical senses tingled. There was something here, hidden beneath layers of time and secrecy. She ran her hands over the statue, feeling for any hidden mechanisms. Suddenly, her fingers caught on a small indentation in the base. With a soft rumble, the statue began to rotate, revealing a hidden passageway leading down into darkness. Evelyn's heart raced with excitement and trepidation. This had to be it. Steeling herself, Evelyn descended the narrow stairs, her magical light illuminating the way. The air grew cooler and damper as she went deeper underground. Finally, the stairs opened up into a large circular chamber. Evelyn gasped at the sight before her. The walls were lined with shelves, each holding artifacts of obvious magical origin. Glowing crystals, ancient tomes, and objects that seemed to defy the laws of physics filled the room. But at the center, on a pedestal of black marble, sat a teardrop-shaped crystal of the deepest blue. The Weeping Stone. The Water Keystone. As Evelyn approached it, she could feel its power resonating with her own Lumen magic. There was no doubt. This was one of the Harmonic Keystones she had been searching for. Just as she was about to reach for it, a voice spoke from the shadows, causing her to freeze in place. "I must say I'm impressed. I didn't think anyone would find this place for at least another generation." Evelyn whirled around, her heart pounding. From the darkness emerged a man tall and elegant, with silver hair and piercing green eyes. He smiled at her, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. "Who are you?" Evelyn demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. The man's smile widened. "Ah, where are my manners? Nathaniel Hawthorne at your service. Last living descendant of the Hawthorne family, and keeper of its secrets." He gave a mocking bow. "And you, my dear, are trespassing." Evelyn's mind raced. She hadn't expected to encounter anyone here, let alone a Hawthorne. "I'm sorry for the intrusion," she said carefully. "I'm a researcher, interested in local history and artifacts. I had heard rumors about your family's collection and dash." Nathaniel cut her off with a wave of his hand. "Please spare me the lies. I know why you're here." His eyes flickered to the Weeping Stone. "You're after the Keystone. The question is, do you truly understand what you're dealing with?" Evelyn tensed, ready to defend herself if necessary. "I know more than you might think, Mr. Hawthorne. That stone is part of something much bigger than just your family's collection. The fate of our world of two worlds depends on it." Nathaniel's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. "Two worlds, you say? Well, well. It seems you do know something after all." He took a step closer, his gaze intense. "Tell me, how did a simple librarian come to be involved in matters of such cosmic significance?" Evelyn's blood ran cold. How did he know she was a librarian? She hadn't told him that. As the realization dawned on her, Nathaniel's smile turned predatory. "Oh yes, Ms. Matthews. I know all about you. Your little excursions into Lumina haven't gone unnoticed. There are forces at work here beyond your comprehension." As he spoke, the shadows behind him seemed to deepen, taking on a life of their own. Evelyn's Lumen magic recoiled, sensing a familiar yet terrifying presence. The void. Somehow, Nathaniel Hawthorne was connected to the very force she was fighting against. Evelyn knew in that moment that she was in far greater danger than she had ever imagined. The quest for the Harmonic Keystones had just become a deadly game of cat and mouse, and she was trapped in the lair of a very dangerous predator. With the Weeping Stone just out of reach and a servant of the void blocking her escape, Evelyn realized that her real test was just beginning. Everything she had learned in Lumina, every ounce of courage in which she possessed, would be put to the test in the next few moments. The fate of two worlds now hung in the balance, with Evelyn Matthews standing as the only line of defense against the encroaching darkness. Chapter 11. Confrontation in the Shadows. Evelyn's mind raced as she faced Nathaniel Hawthorne, the air around them thick with tension. She knew she had to act fast, but caution was crucial. One wrong move could spell disaster not just for her, but for both worlds she was trying to protect. "Mr. Hawthorne," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I don't know what you think you know about Lumina or the Void, but I can assure you, the power you're dealing with is more dangerous than you can imagine." Nathaniel's smile never wavered, but his eyes hardened. "Oh, I'm quite aware of the dangers, Miss Matthews. But you see, danger often walks hand in hand with opportunity. The Void offers power beyond your wildest dreams, the power to reshape reality itself." As he spoke, the shadows behind him writhed and pulsed, tendrils of darkness reaching out like grasping fingers. Evelyn could feel the malevolent energy radiating from them, a stark contrast to the warm, life-affirming Lumen magic she had grown accustomed to. "And what will be left to reshape once the Void consumes everything?" Evelyn challenged, taking a step closer to the pedestal where the weeping stone sat. "You're being used, Mr. Hawthorne. The Void doesn't share power. It only destroys." For a moment, uncertainty flickered across Nathaniel's face, but it was quickly replaced by a mask of cold determination. "You understand so little," he said, his voice taking on an otherworldly echo. "The Void is not destruction. It is transformation. And with the Harmonic Keystones, I will control that transformation." Suddenly, the shadows behind Nathaniel surged forward, forming into grotesque, writhing shapes. Evelyn reacted instinctively, throwing up a barrier of Lumen energy. The shadows crashed against it like waves against a cliff, hissing and steaming where they touched the light. Nathaniel's eyes widened in surprise. "Impressive," he murmured. "It seems Lumina has taught you well. But let's see how you fare against true power." He raised his hands and the darkness responded, coalescing into a swirling vortex of negative energy. Evelyn could feel it pulling at her, trying to unravel the very fabric of her being. She gritted her teeth, pouring more power into her barrier. As the two forces clashed, the artifacts around the room began to rattle and shake. Vials shattered, spilling glowing liquids across the floor. Ancient tomes flew from their shelves, their pages fluttering wildly in the maelstrom of energy. Evelyn knew she couldn't keep this up forever. Her connection to Lumen magic was strong, but Nathaniel's link to the Void seemed bottomless. She needed to end this quickly. In a moment of clarity, Evelyn remembered something Zephyr had taught her during their training sessions. Lumen magic wasn't just about power. It was about harmony and connection. With a deep breath, she changed her approach. Instead of pushing against the Void energy, Evelyn began to weave her magic around it, creating a complex lattice of light. The darkness writhed and twisted, trying to break free, but Evelyn's spell held firm. "What are you doing?" Nathaniel growled, his composure finally cracking as he felt his control slipping. Evelyn didn't respond, her entire focus on maintaining the intricate web of energy. Slowly but surely, the darkness began to recede, drawn back into Nathaniel like water down a drain. As the last tendrils of shadow disappeared, Nathaniel fell to his knees, gasping for breath. The room fell silent, save for the soft hum of Evelyn's lingering magic. "How?" Nathaniel wheezed, looking up at Evelyn with a mixture of fear and awe. "How did you do that?" Evelyn approached him cautiously, her magic still at the ready. "The Void isn't meant to exist in our world, Mr. Hawthorne. By containing it and harmonizing the energies around it, I forced it back to where it came from. But it's still inside you, isn't it?" Nathaniel nodded weakly, the fight gone out of him. "It's been with me for so long. I don't know if I can let it go." Evelyn knelt beside him, her expression softening. "It's not too late. The Lumen magic can help cleanse the Void's influence, but you have to want it. You have to choose to let it go." For a long moment, Nathaniel was silent, internal conflict clear on his face. Then slowly he nodded. I want to be free of it. Please help me." With a gentle smile, Evelyn placed her hand on Nathaniel's forehead. She closed her eyes, channeling the warm, life-affirming energy of Lumen magic into him. Nathaniel gasped, his body going rigid as light and shadow battled within him. Finally, with a sound like a long exhale, a cloud of inky darkness poured from Nathaniel's mouth and eyes. It hovered in the air for a moment before dissipating like smoke in the wind. Nathaniel slumped forward, catching himself on his hands. When he looked up at Evelyn, his eyes were clear for the first time, no longer clouded by the void's influence. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice hoarse but sincere. Evelyn helped him to his feet, her mind already turning to the next challenge. "Mr. Hawthorne, I know this is a lot to process, but I need your help. The weeping stone, the water keystone. It's crucial for stopping the void. Will you help me protect it?" Nathaniel looked at the glowing blue crystal on the pedestal, then back at Evelyn. With a nod, he reached out and picked up the stone, holding it out to her. "It's yours," he said. "Use it well. And I think it's time I shared everything I know about the other keystones. My family has been guarding these secrets for generations, but now I see they were meant for this moment. For you." As Evelyn carefully took the weeping stone, feeling its cool weight in her hand, she knew that this was just the beginning. One keystone found, for more to go. And now, with an unexpected ally in Nathaniel Hawthorne, she had new hope for the challenges that lay ahead. But as the two of them made their way out of the hidden chamber, neither noticed the small mechanical bird perched in the shadows of the mansion's attic. Its glass eyes gleamed with an unnatural light as it recorded everything, ready to report back to its mysterious master. The race for the Harmonic Keystones was truly underway, and forces beyond Evelyn's imagination were beginning to take notice. Her quest to save two worlds was about to become far more complicated and dangerous than she ever could have anticipated. Chapter 12: Echoes and Ripples. As Evelyn and Nathaniel emerged from the hidden chamber, the first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon. The Hawthorne estate, which had seemed so foreboding in the night, now looked merely sad and neglected in the soft morning light. "We should go to my study," Nathaniel said, his voice still rough from his ordeal. "There are documents there, family records that might help us locate the other keystones." Evelyn nodded, the weeping stone a comforting weight in her pocket. As they made their way through the dusty halls of the mansion, she couldn't help but marvel at how quickly her situation had changed. An enemy had become an ally, and the first piece of the puzzle was now in her possession. Nathaniel's study was a cluttered room filled with books, maps, and curious artifacts. He went straight to an old roll-top desk and began rummaging through its drawers. "Here," he said, pulling out a leather-bound journal. "This was my great-grandfather's. He was obsessed with the keystones, spent his whole life searching for them. I always thought he was mad, but now..." As Nathaniel trailed off, leafing through the journal, Evelyn felt a sudden urge to check in with her allies in Lumina. She pulled out the communication crystal Zephyr had given her and activated it. To her surprise, instead of Zephyr's familiar face, she saw Ether, the chief lorekeeper. His expression was grave. "Evelyn," he said, his voice tinged with urgency, "thank the stars you're all right. We've been trying to reach you for hours." Evelyn frowned. "What's wrong? Has something happened?" Ether nodded solemnly. "The void. It's growing stronger, faster than we anticipated. There have been incursions." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "Incursions? You mean the void has breached Lumina?" "Not just Lumina," Ether said. "Your world too. Reports are coming in from across both realms of strange phenomena, unexplained disappearances, and transformations." Nathaniel, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "The void's influence is spreading. I've seen it before on a smaller scale. It starts subtly strange weather patterns, electronic devices malfunctioning, people acting out of character. But it escalates quickly." Ether's eyes widened as he noticed Nathaniel. "Evelyn, who is that? Be careful about Dash." "It's okay," Evelyn interrupted. "This is Nathaniel Hawthorne. He was under the void's influence, but I managed to free him. He's helping us now." Ether looked skeptical but nodded. "Very well. But Evelyn, you must be cautious. The void is cunning, and its corruption runs deep. Now tell me, have you made any progress with the keystones?" Evelyn smiled, pulling the weeping stone from her pocket. "See for yourself." Ether's face lit up with hope as he saw the glowing blue crystal. The water keystone. Evelyn, this is incredible. You've done in days what we've been attempting for centuries. We may have leads on the others too, Evelyn said, gesturing to the journal Nathaniel was holding. But Ether, if the void is growing stronger, we need to move fast. What should our next steps be? Ether's expression turned thoughtful. Bring the water keystone to Lumina as soon as you can. Its presence here will help strengthen our defenses against the void. And Evelyn, be prepared. Now that you have one of the keystones, you've become a target. The void and its agents will stop at nothing to obtain it. As if on cue, a loud crash echoed from somewhere in the mansion. Evelyn and Nathaniel exchanged alarmed looks. We're not alone, Nathaniel said, his voice low. There's a hidden exit through the wine cellar. We need to go now. Evelyn quickly said goodbye to Ether and deactivated the crystal. As she and Nathaniel hurried from the study, she could hear heavy footsteps and muffled voices coming from the floor below. Who are they? Evelyn whispered as they crept down a back staircase. Nathaniel's face was grim. Probably mercenaries hired by one of my former associates. The kind of people who would do anything for the power the void promises. They reached the wine cellar, Nathaniel quickly locating a hidden lever that opened a secret passage. As they slipped inside, Evelyn heard a shout from above. They had been discovered. Run! Nathaniel yelled, no longer bothering with stealth. The passage was narrow and dark, forcing them to run blindly, guided only by Nathaniel's memory and Evelyn's hastily conjured lumen light. Behind them, they could hear their pursuers gaining ground. Finally, they emerged into the early morning light, finding themselves in the woods behind the Hawthorne estate. Without pausing, they continued to run, weaving between trees and leaping over fallen logs. As they ran, Evelyn's mind raced. The void was growing stronger. Agents were after the keystones, and now she was on the run with a man who just hours ago had been her enemy. The quest for the Harmonic Keystones had taken a dangerous turn, and Evelyn knew that from this moment on, nothing would be the same. With the sound of pursuit still echoing behind them, Evelyn and Nathaniel plunged deeper into the forest, the fate of two worlds resting on their ability to stay one step ahead of the encroaching darkness. The adventure was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning.
Subscribe for more.